Welcome everyone. I'm Soumya, joined by Nitika and Jack from Group 6. Today, we'll explore network and data security in cloud banking, a vital topic as financial services dive into the cloud. While cloud platforms bring incredible scalability and agility, they also blur traditional perimeters and introduce new risks around data protection and access control. In this session, we'll cover key security frameworks, examine emerging threats, and dive into solutions like zero trust architecture and AI-powered anomaly detection. Let's begin by looking at how cloud banking architectures have evolved. Nitika, go ahead.
Thank you, Samuel. As we know, it is important to delineate the challenges and opportunities that characterize the current banking landscapes. The swift adaptation of cloud technologies is fundamentally reshaping the operations of financial services, enhancing scalability, altering savior delivery, and foster greater agility in response to customer and market demands. Sensitive financial data is now transmitted across distributed systems, rendering it more susceptible and to the cybersecurity, data breaches, and violations of privacy. To mitigate these challenges, financial institutes must adhere to rigorous regulatory frameworks including GDPR, PCI DSS, GLBM, as these regulations necessitate the implementation of robust security and data protection measures. In the response to the pressing issues, the adaptation of modern security models is imperative. ZTA, that is Zero Trust Architecture, facilitates the elimination of implicit trust within the network components by enforcing continuous verification and applying least privilege access principles. Next slide, please. Let's examine the foundational security models in modern cloud banking in the zero trust architecture. As it is articulated in NIST Special Application 800-207, which details a strategic transition from traditional perimeter based security to a framework that assumes no implicit trust regardless of the origin of request. The central tendency of ZTA is both straightforward and significant. That is, never trust, always verify. As the each request, whether initiated by a user, device, or application, must undergo continuous authentication and authorization based on contextual information. Additionally, the principle of least privileges access is paramount. The principle ensures that users and systems are granted only minimum level of access necessity to fulfill their responsibilities. The advantage of adopting zero trust principle within financial institutions are notable. First, it is limited lateral movements with networks, which is essential for preventing attackers from escalating their access following a breach. Second, ZTA is particularly well suited for hybrid and multi-cloud environment, which is prevalent in contemporary banking IT infrastructure. Next slide, please. We are outlining the seven core tenets of zero trust architecture, which will examine how to illustrate to enhance the security in cloud-based systems. First, all resources are protected. Every asset, including servers, users, applications, and dataset, must be individually secured. The concept of a safe zone is no longer viable. Second, all communications are secured. All network traffics, whether internal or external, must be encrypted and authenticated to protect sensitive financial data during transmission. Third, access is controlled on a peer session basis. Users and devices must undergo revalidation each time they attempt to access a resource as long as trust is not permissible. Fourth, access policies are dynamic and context based. Access decisions should be informed by real time factors such as user identity, geographical location, security posture, and threat intelligence. Fifth, continuous monitoring and validation are essential. Security should not be treated as one-time assessment. Sixth, strong authentication and authorization methods are required. Implementation of MFA alongside robust identity verification is critical to ensure that the entity seeking access is legitimate. Lastly, decision making is contextual. Access must be granted only when all specified conditions are satisfied, including verification of the user, devices, time of request, and behavior patterns. Next slide, please. The objective is to adopt the ZTO principle in a manner that bolsters security within interruption core banking operations, which is crucial for large financial institutions. There are few techniques for the integral to this methodology. First, identity aware proxies, which intermediate the functions between user and application to verify identities and enforce access control according to predefined policies and contextual factors. Second, micro segmentation. This strategy involves dividing the network into smaller, isolated segments, thereby controlling traffic flow and, and limiting the lateral movement of potential attackers. Lastly, continuous authentication rather than relying solely on one-time login credentials. This approach employs continuous risk assessment and behavior analytics to revalidate user sessions and identify anomalies in real time. Next slide, please. It is evident that traditional parameters defense is increasingly efficient. The instance where the attacker significantly breached the parameter. Conventional security models often afford them excessive internal access, which presents a significant risk to transition systems. ZTA significant address there are few concerns for by facilitating. First, continuous verification. Each user, device, and session undergoes reputation verification where trust is never assumed, even for the internal purpose. Second, least privilege access. Users are granted to minimum level of access required to perform their responsibilities. Third, protection against legal lateral movements, that are segmentation of resources and enforcement by contextual access, which effectively inhibits attackers from navigating freely within the network. ZTA has some operational three core components. First is policy engine, where the component strategy as a decision-making authority evaluating access requests based on established rules. Policy administration. This element manages the establishment and transmission of connection in adherence with the directive provided by the policy engine. The policy enforcement point functions as the access gatekeeper. This component enforces access control between the user and the relevant source. Overall, ZTA presents a modern, adaptive, and compliance-friendly strategy for defending financial transaction systems mindset towards evolving threat landscape. Over to Samuel.
Thank you, Nitika. Let us now move into integrating AI as part of the architecture. This slide highlights the standout advantages of AI-powered IPS in banking context. Through AI, we get instant real-time scoring in every transaction and session. So even brand new exploit or subtle fraud indicators trigger instant alerts. What really makes it a difference is the adaptive feedback loop. When analysts mark alerts as true or false, the model ingests the data and tunes itself, driving down noise without us rewriting the rules. These systems are built to handle massive scale, millions of events per hour without introducing latency. They also integrate seamlessly into your existing SIM and threat intel workflows, giving you a single unified view of security. And to cap it all off, they can produce audit-ready reports that map directly to PCI DSS or GLBA standards. turning what used to be a painful audit process into one-click export. Next slide. With those benefits covered, let's shift gear and dive beneath the surface and explore the machine learning techniques that power these capabilities. Here we unpack the core ML methods driving our AI IDS IPS. At the base are unsupervised models, isolation forests, and autoencoders that learn your normal traffic patterns and flag anything statistically out of place, even without prior labels. Layered on top, supervised classifiers like random forest and gradient boosting rely on known attack datasets for solid detection of familiar threats. Then we bring in sequence models, long short-term memory, and gated recurrent units that treat each session as a narrative, spotting intrusions by detecting odd twists in storyline. We also use Markov chains to enforce valid protocol transitions, catching misuse that slips past other detectors. Thus, this multi-layered approach ensures we catch both novel attack patterns and establish threat signatures. Next slide. Now we have seen what's under the hood. The next question is how to turn these models into production-ready system. Deploying AI IDS IPS effectively is more than just flipping a switch. Start with a solid training baseline, at least 30 days of clean network and payment log plus synthetic attack samples to give model a balanced view of normal versus malicious behavior. Next, manage alert volume with tiered levels, info, warning, critical, and a human in the loop review for anything novel, keeping false positives in check. For performance, run the lightweight model right at the edge for instant blocking and handle heavier retraining overnight on a central server. And don't skip the adversarial drills. Periodic red team tests help the system learn to resist evasion. Finally, automate your compliance reports so audit become as simple as clicking export. That wraps up our short dive into AI-based IDS IPS. On to you, Jack.
Thank you, Samya. Now we're going to get into data encryption and privacy in cloud banking. So my team members have just introduced zero trust technology architecture as well as AI anomaly detection. And to add to that, to make sure financial businesses are secure, data encryption is a must. So we start with looking at AES encryption, advanced encryption standards, mostly encrypts data at rest. Using 256-bit keys, as these provide the highest level of security against attacks such as brute force attacks. So AES is important because it's critical in the security frameworks of all sorts of financial sectors around the globe, recognized for its robustness and efficiency. It's very important for safeguarding data at rest, like I mentioned. So on from that, we look at encryption methods for data in transit, and we see that end-to-end encryption is becoming adopted as an essential safeguard in the financial sector. So this encryption standard continuously encrypts the data in transit, minimizing the risk of sensitive information being intercepted or accessed by unauthorized entities. So, as cyber threats are getting more sophisticated, banks are implementing this. The data is encrypted from the source and doesn't get decrypted again until it reaches its destination. Um, and then we also have tokenization that can be used. So it's a security technique that replaces sensitive data elements with non-sensitive equivalents, commonly referred to as tokens. These tokens, they retain all the essential information about the data without compromising its security, and they can only be mapped back to the original data through a secured tokenization system that is located on the network. When these tokens are removed from the network, say through a data breach, do nothing, they can't be used. So makes data breaches somewhat ineffective. And this method of using tokenization is highly effective at especially in the realm of payment processing systems within cloud banking environments, aka our banks, financial institutions. Um, so moving on from that, we also need to look at public key infrastructure, PKI, for managing keys and certificates, because we need to ensure that the secure electronic transfer of information and banking operations stays secure. PKI employs digital certificates along with public-private key pairs to enhance the security of online transactions, particularly those in the cloud. By using PKI, banks can guarantee that information sent over the internet is not only secure, but most importantly, verifiable, reducing the risk of fraud and tampering. Cloud access security brokers. So these essentially serve as the link between cloud service users and cloud service providers. They function as kind of a pivotal component in the security infrastructure. Their role is to ensure that sensitive data transmitted to and stored in the cloud is securely encrypted, thereby preventing unauthorized access breaches between the on-premise and the cloud. Additionally, the cloud access security brokers are instrumental in providing continuous oversight of the cloud activities. So, with all this, there's also challenges that come with trying to have top-notch data encryption and privacy in your systems. One of these is the consistent data breaches and cyber attacks. So the landscape of the digital banking world is increasingly being threatened by higher frequency and greater sophistication of attacks. So banks are forced to engage in a continuous struggle against a variety of threats, including malware invasions, which can cripple systems, phishing schemes, which deceitfully obtain confidential information, and other malicious cyber activities. And so you have to be aware of what's out there and keeping up to date with all that. Additionally, compliance with multiple jurisdictions is a huge challenge with financial institutions, especially those that are international, because navigating the complex regulatory landscape of multiple jurisdictions can be difficult as these financial institutions encounter different regulations with their own rules and standards. It's hard to establish a set of privacy policies and encryption standards that are universally applicable and compliant. So this necessitates a highly adaptable and nuanced approach to compliance. Insider threats. This is a big one, usually overlooked in most businesses as a security threat, but it represents a significant persistent concern where the misuse of access rights by employees or contractors can lead to serious breaches of privacy. These individuals who are granted legitimate access to a cloud's bank's resources as part of their operational roles may intentionally or even unintentionally compromise sensitive data. So, to safeguard against this, these institutions must implement stringent access controls to restrict entry to vital systems, as well as define the extent of actions that these authorized users can perform. Um, Third-party vendor risks is another somewhat overlooked risk because the reliance on third parties for cloud services, it introduces a new layer of risk to the bank's operational security. Um, the challenge of ensuring that the third party upholds the same rigorous privacy and security standards as them is tough because you can't really tell them what they need to do. It's hard to trust what they have in place. So banks have to exercise due diligence and establish robust vendor management to not only assess and verify the security postures of these third parties, but also continuously monitor and enforce compliance. And lastly, a lot of these financial institutions were established well before the advent of cloud computing. So a lot of their systems are legacy systems, older. So it's a bit of a task to move them to the cloud without exposing some of these vulnerabilities to be exploited by malicious actors. So financial groups just have to be aware of this. Um, Moving on to some new technological innovations and solutions to some of these challenges for the financial world. First is blockchain technology. So this helps with our encryption challenge. So with blockchain coming out and rapidly emerging, um, it's important because it's a decentralized structure that offers a distributed ledger that is maintained across multiple nodes, which differs from the current centralized databases traditionally used across the financial institutions today. The blockchain's cryptographic algorithms are key in ensuring that once a transaction is recorded, it cannot be altered uh, retroactively, thus creating a tamper-proof ledger. As a result, blockchain technology presents a formidable resistance against fraudulent activities and authorized intrusion attempts. Um, Artificial intelligence and machine learning are also swiftly becoming integral to fortifying the security infrastructure of cloud banking. By harnessing these, financial institutions can process, analyze large volumes of data with unprecedented speed and accuracy. They can identify complex patterns and anomalies, as well as adapt from data becoming increasingly from the data that it absorbs and becoming increasingly more effective over time. So this enables the banks to shift from a reactive to a proactive security posture, taking preemptive action to avert cyber attacks. Secure multi-party communication. This is good for addressing the third-party risks. So it allows for companies to use systems or computing functions to uh, compute certain data without exposing the data itself. So this protects like a bank's clients' data from being exposed to third-party platforms. Lastly, we have pets, privacy enhancing technologies. These are just different technologies coming out that are critical in safeguarding individual data privacy. One notable technique for pets is that the differential privacy. It involves the introduction of controlled randomness into data sets. This effectively masks individual data points. It makes it extremely difficult to trace any piece of data back to an individual user. And after all that, we take our three things that we talked about, AI anomaly-based detection, zero trust architecture, and data encryption, and we formed as a team a network diagram that could be used as a template or model for financial institutions trying to more securely build their networks. So first, with zero trust architecture, we want to make sure that if there's a data breach, it's contained. So we have to segment our networks, whether it be corporate office, cloud services, the third-party network. This helps to contain any sort of breach and lateral movement by malicious actors. Having zero trust gateways, MFA, and identity access controls, we can ensure that we have only people that are supposed to be on the network accessing the network. And that's part of that least privilege and segmenting responsibilities. So with AI anomaly-based detection, it's kind of a new thing, and we want to emphasize that all these networks will have IDS, IPS constantly monitored, looking for different behaviors using AI, and report back to the SIEM system where it all can be collected and stored and viewed by the SOC or whoever. And that's really important for seeing what kind of things are going on in the network, having visibility. With that, we also have an emphasis on encryption. We think encryption is incredibly important, whether it's in transit or at rest. So data at rest, like in the databases, is stored with AES, and in transit with TLS. When that becomes outdated because of quantum computers nowadays, quantum resistant encryption is also an option for encrypting data in transit. So that's our network diagram. And moving on from that, we kind of looked at some recommendations or future areas of interest for financial institutions in improving their network security. Firstly, we have continuous innovation in encryption technology. So banks should continue to invest in research and develop, stay ahead of the cyber threats, adopting the latest encryption technologies, security practices, um, making sure they're up to date with the evil that's also out there. Secondly, we have holistic privacy strategies. So this refers more to the company culture, making sure that your company is educated in cyber threats, phishing attacks, just to minimize the threat of insider threats, because they can be accidental. And so to make sure that the company and its employees are aware of what's out there helps to protect you. Also, regulatory alignment. We've all mentioned before, regulatory compliance is critical to making sure you, well, can run your business without getting fined or shut down. So keeping up with the standards and regulations out there is important. And lastly, we recommend collaborating and knowledge sharing amongst the industry. These financial institutions should share breaches or attacks or software systems that they all have or are using or notice. That way, the whole industry can be better prepared to protect against breaches and attacks. So, to wrap us all up, in conclusion, we see that the symbiotic relationship that we have between innovation, data encryption, privacy, um, and regulatory compliance, it forms the backbone of secure and trustworthy cloud banking. As the sector continues to evolve, banks must navigate these dimensions with the foresight and diligence, ensuring that they not only meet the current demands, but also anticipate and prepare for future challenges. So we noticed a few things working through this. Some of our key findings is that the evolving encryption practices are something that um, is worth looking into. As I mentioned before, quantum encryption is something new that could be coming out as people have access to more quantum computing capabilities. Um, Privacy challenges, internet's growing, making sure that the privacy is of utmost importance. And lastly, regulatory compliance. That is GDPR, PCI, GLBA. These are things that most people don't think of, but they hold a strong grasp on what these financial companies can do because they have to adhere to these standards. So that is all we have for you today on our financial systems and the zero trust architecture, AI anomaly-based detections, and encryption and privacy, and how they are all so critical in building a very secure network for. So thank you very much, and that is all.